Anthony Williams, and I work for the US Environmental Protection Agency. For a number of years now, even pre-EPA, I've been using social media tools to share a message around the work that I do, the papers that I publish, the presentations that I give, and even to share data. I'd like to give an overview of how I've been using some of those tools and how they may be of advantage to yourself. What I'd like to point out is at the top right-hand corner of even this presentation is an orchid. And this is what I refer to as the Social Security number for scientists. I put this on every presentation that I give because when I share this will get indexed online and this ORCID ID can be used for searching. We'll talk more about that. There are various versions of this talk already available, and you can find them on slideshare.net. Notice my name, Anthony, has no H. You will find over 380 presentations that I've given over the years there. And at the CTAC meeting that I attended this week in Toronto, there are already 8 presentations and posters available for viewing. There's also a related publication that was put into F1000 Research, and it gives a lot more depth on some of the things I'll be discussing in this presentation. I ask you, who markets your work? Because if you don't do that, who will? And it is really not the job of researchers to become experts in doing this, but some basic understanding of the tools that are available and some basic approaches to sharing your data, your presentations, publications can be really of value. And this is a comment from Matt Shipman at NC State about saying scientists should also be talking about what they do. My hopes with this presentation is to encourage you to participate in spreading the message around your work. Give you a short overview, some of the tools, share some of the stories and successes that I've had. And please don't think of this as just bragging about your work and sharing your work. There's so many benefits to the community if you do so. If you do nothing else at the end of this, I would hope that you would at least claim an ORCID if you don't already have one, and maybe consider putting a couple of hours a month onto your profile. And I believe that this will have a bigger impact online for you. As I said, the ORCID has been around for a while now. There's over 7 million that have been issued. It is the scientist's social security number in my point of view. This is my ORCID ID, and it becomes a very powerful way for when I share it via presentations, publications, data sets, that everything can be aggregated with one simple search. Hopefully many of you already have this. Many publications expect you to put these on, so when you see this circle with ID in it, that means that ORCID is already connected. When I actually put this on there, it automatically shows up on my ORCID profile, and the biography that you start to build up on the ORCID site is very rich. Publishers are requiring them now in many cases, so don't be surprised if you're asked to provide yours. I also encourage you, even if you're not requested, when a publication is going in, ask the primary author to supply your ORCID. I do see a lot of papers where the primary author has provided theirs. None of the co-authors have their ORCID IDs, and that's a shame. Because I use it in various places, when I search online using my ORCID ID, it will immediately pull together things. So in this case, just pasting it into Google, you actually get to my ORCID page. I put it onto my Google Scholar Citations page as a part of my signature, and then other sites are actually picking up the details. So Academic Karma, which is not something I maintain, is pulling automatically this information. So put it everywhere. When you give a presentation, as I'm showing, put it on the presentation. On a poster, if you go check out my posters that have been given this week, you will see my ORCID on it. Because I circulate my posters then, put those on SlideShare, the ORCID ID will be indexed directly from the poster. Put it on all your profiles. So in this case, you can see it on my Google Scholar. So Google indexes pretty much everything, as we know. So even if ORCID itself, the website, they are not scraping the web, trying to pull everything together. That's not their job. But when you do that, look at the result here on Google. When you look at the images, you can see various pages, various slides from the slide deck that are pulling that information together. So think about it. If you put hundreds or thousands of hours of work into your research and then into the paper, And then you put that out. You've gone through peer review. You've had so much feedback on it. The work that you take to get something out there. Then how much work does a publisher do to actually talk about your article and spread it? Maybe a tweet, maybe. Unless it's something really high impact that they're going to get behind. They have thousands of articles coming through. So it's for you really to do more work on that. And I think of something like six-touch marketing to spread that message over and over. I think also about presentation given in a room where you may have 20 to 30 people. And that's it. You give 20 to 30 minutes to 20 to 30 people, and then your presentation is done. But if you put it online, if you share it, then it can find a much wider audience. And I have examples where presentations have been downloaded and viewed over 20,000 times. Because we're all going to be evaluated in some way, it could come in different flavors, of course. It used to simply be peer-reviewed publications, but today it's not. It's what are the data sets that you're providing to support other research? Are you building software? What posters and presentations are you giving? Maybe film and audio, for example, this. And make sure you're allowed to share all of these outputs from your research, because some of you may be constrained in doing so. You might have to go through clearance. Certainly my presentations are cleared. Make sure you can do that, but then why not share them? I use LinkedIn a lot as the most basic career networking tool. Certainly, I find it very useful to stay up with what some of my peers and colleagues are working on outside of the agency. Clearly, I'm informed of internally, but I follow a lot of people. This is also a very good way for people to find out about you when they're going to interview you. If I'm involved with interviewing a group of people, I will look to certain places to learn about them before I walk in the room. LinkedIn is one of the best places to do that. This is my primary project at present. Some of you may have heard of it. Comtox Chemicals Dashboard. It's a public site for accessing hundreds of thousands of chemicals and related data. And I want people to know about this, so I share this on various platforms. So on LinkedIn, I share information about this project directly there. And I have multiple projects that I've been involved with over the years. I've shared that information over the years so that people can keep up with the latest iterations. And you can see the other people involved with this project at the bottom. That there are a lot more than the pictures you see. When a publication goes out, then I make sure that I share that publication also. So the LinkedIn network that I have, and I have, I think, 2,500 followers, something like that. They get to see immediately when a publication comes out. When we do new updates to the dashboard itself, then I make sure that I share that information. And you can see there were 397 views. This was within 24 hours of making this announcement. So people are finding out when updates are being made, and I'm using this networking form to do that. You can get people to recommend you. This is certainly of more value if you're earlier in your career. You want to choose the right people to talk about the work that you do, the quality of science that you've been involved with, etc., etc. So a very useful thing to do. You can also ask to be endorsed for the work that you do. And in this case, I've been recommended for chemistry and analytical chemistry, which is what I've done for many years, and informatics. For some reason, I've been deemed to be highly involved with drug discovery, but I've never worked in a drug discovery organization. But I have published in drug discovery journals. So that's probably what that association is. You get to control these endorsements on your profile. When you put the work into making LinkedIn rich and up to date, one of the benefits is that you can save the entire profile out as a PDF file. So if people ask for my latest and greatest overview of what's been going on with articles, publications, I just click that button and send them a PDF file. And this was one I generated last week, and they've really done a nice job of pulling this together. Now they've improved the layout and the display of the data. It's really, really nice at this point. For my presentations, I use an associated site called SlideShare that was purchased by LinkedIn, LinkedIn, by the way, belongs to Microsoft. It's an independent, run by LinkedIn, but it belongs to Microsoft. They paid billions of dollars. Recently, I gave a similar presentation to this in Columbia, South Carolina, and I showed that I'd already uploaded my slide deck that I was presenting there, and I said, rather than take notes, please feel free to go to SlideShare and download the presentation. So the one I'm giving to you right now is already on SlideShare, and you can download it there. You can get thousands of views. Commonly, I can get 50 to 100 overnight on a presentation that I put up. What I do is I share it through SlideShare. I release it through LinkedIn and Twitter that I've put it there, and then people will come to view it. Sometimes I can get thousands of views, especially when other people start tweeting about it, blogging about it, etc., etc. I used to be able to do a lot more social media activities because I was at Royal Society of Chemistry. I'm building something called ChemSpider, but at EPA, I'm not as open to doing that stuff. I have to get a lot of stuff cleared, so I'm a lot more careful about how I use the social media systems. Analytics, you can look directly into how many people are reviewing your presentations and downloading. So this would be in a month, 3,000 views. You can see which of the content, what's the most interesting to the community. And I think this is from last year. Oh, no, sorry, it's from 2016. I was getting almost 100,000 views in a year. So think of how many talks you would give, how small the room would be, how the audience is captive, and your presentation is complete. And then all of a sudden you can put it online and get so many more views. It's not just slide decks. I also put my open access articles there, and also some of the projects that I choose not to finally publish have gone there. I would have to get full clearance to do that nowadays. I also maintain a Google document with my ORCID ID on, so every time that I publish an article or a book chapter, I put that on the Google Drive, which is accessible with a link to all my DOIs. Maintain everything publicly. I use ResearchGate also. I like it as a platform. I find it very useful. A number of my colleagues also use ResearchGate, and including my lab head down here, Rusty Thomas. You can see that I have a number of citations for my articles is all captured. It's a great site for maintaining similar information to LinkedIn, but is even more expansive. So I can put, as you can see, negative results, patterns, posters, presentations, code. It can all be put to ResearchGate. So it's a lot more expansive. I use it in the same way for ResearchGate for sharing a project. So again, the dashboard, any updates, and I get a lot of views and feedback on this, questions, all of the research that we put out in terms of presentations, publications also goes here. Then you can start to get statistics on how many people are looking at the information that you are posting online. So just here you can see 33,000 reads when I captured this, the number of citations, recommendations for the works that are being published here. So it's a great way to do it. And if you're overburdened with too many emails coming from the system, please feel free to control a lot of that information. You can switch it off. Similar things can go on here with endorsements, top right-hand side, your publications that you're adding. You can also view related publications. You're made aware of those as they happen. And this is the thing. I hear a lot of people say they get too many emails. Just go into the account notification settings and change them. Data sharing. At EPA, we are a user, certainly inside our center, for Figshare. We put our presentations, data sets on Figshare. There are many other platforms that are also used by the agency to share data. This is one that you can use yourself. When we put our data there, we connect it directly to the publication. You can see how many people are downloading data. You can see how many people are viewing it. This is a nice way to keep the connection between the data set itself and the publication that you may put out. Of course, it doesn't have to just be a published paper to have an associated data set. You can release data sets without having associated publications. They can still be of high value. You can have personal data sharing. You can go set up a free Figshare account. I've had one for many, many years now, and you can see top right hand side some of the details around how many items I've had viewed on here. Downloads, I still think this number is incredibly high, 32,000 downloads of presentations, publications, and data sets. So feel free to set up Figshare and notice the ORCID ID in the middle of the page. If you're a reviewer of papers, and I review a lot of publications, I've got 4 that I'm in the middle of reviewing right now. Many people do this anonymously without any recognition of the fact that you've done this. I take advantage of a site called Publons, where I post what journals I've reviewed for. In some cases, those reviews can actually be public, depending on the actual journal themselves, whether they allow you to share your actual review publicly. Most of them are not public. But it's very simple to use. You register the fact that you've reviewed for a particular publisher, a particular journal, and then they will recognize that directly. So Publons, I find, is a great site to use for that purpose. Also associated with an ORCID ID, so you simply associate it that way, log in that way. Many of these scientific sites are starting to use things like ORCID as a way to log in, much as they do with Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. This is up until April 2019. It gives you a profile of all of the reviews I was doing. I didn't start using it until probably 2016, really, and I could only find some of my older reviews. So believe me, I was reviewing all the way through this period, but I just can't find all the old reviews I did. So these are some of the details that show up automatically because ORCID on Publons is linked to the ORCID profile. It shows you on ORCID website all of the journals that I've been reviewing for. And as I said, some of these reviews can be public to the detail, but many are not. The journal does not allow that. There's also been a shift towards something called altmetrics, and this is the fact that we shouldn't be measured only by our publications and how many citations we get, but also what are you contributing online that people are using and taking advantage out of. So in this case, you can see left-hand side downloads and views of my articles, my data, is also a metric of my contributions to impact. Peer review, so certainly that's Publons, that information is out there. The citations is the classical one, but the citations are not just to publications, but to presentations, audio and video works, data sets, etc. And then, of course, we have this altmetrics regarding how many people are linking to my data sets, using them, talking about my data and my presentations on something like Twitter. Impact story is one way that you can actually pull together that information for the top latest 100 works. This also uses your ORCID ID. This is free of charge. You can use this, just simply set up an account, use your ORCID ID to connect, and then start to associate your works with this. And then it will pull together the information, and you can see it right here. You can see how many people are talking about your work on Twitter, Mendeley, Facebook, etc., etc. This is an example of for some of the latest publications that I was working on. This is fairly old, actually. These are the top publications: open drug discovery, commercial and bioactive chemistry data, etc. And you can see people talking about them. This is an example of one particular article that was saved and shared. All of the comments on the right-hand side, how many people tweeted about it, how many people put it in their blogs. All metrics are also being counted, and you can see these donut scores for an article. So, as an example, for one of the articles we wrote, It was picked up by news outlets. 18 of them were talking about it. People were tweeting about it. It was included in Reddit. And these counts show up automatically on your articles in many publishing platforms today. So this was an example of my postdoc, Andrew McCachran. I encouraged him to use LinkedIn, to use Twitter, so that when he put out an article, he was the primary author, that he makes sure that he released this out to the community and use the social media tools. And it was just a couple of weeks where he started to see that information. Left-hand side, you can see the altmetric donut. You can see that people blogged about it, tweeted about it. It was even referenced in Wikipedia pages. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the shares and the downloads. So I encouraged Andrew to make use of the systems to drive attention to his article. And it went on to become a very, very popular piece of work. This is looking at the altmetric bookmarklet, so you can actually use the DOI directly, go to your article, and there's a bookmarklet that you can put in directly in the browser, and click on that bookmarklet, and it will load this page and show you who is tweeting about it, what Wikipedia articles might be written about your article, etc. So a very simple way to see this information. Hopefully many of you are using something like Google Scholar citations to track your work. If you've published, this is a great way to keep things automatically updated. I do encourage you to ensure that you are pruning, because with a name like Anthony Williams, there are a number of us around, and occasionally an article is associated with me and it is actually nothing to do with me. I use Twitter. Not as much as I used to. When I was working for the Royal Society of Chemistry, I was running the Chem Spider project. I would make sure that I talked about everything that we were doing on that platform. But now working at EPA, I'm a lot more cautious about some of the information that I share, and that's appropriately so. So when you do use Twitter, I would establish a brand name. They call me Chem Connector. I've been Chem Connector for over a decade, and I share stuff there. And the reason I branded myself that way is because that's what I'm trying to do: connect people together as individuals, as groups, with data, with publications, with platforms, with information that can be of value. But you can see, as an example, sometimes I've gotten over 35,000 impressions in a week of some of the things that I share. I've used it to take old science that I've published and awaken those articles. So when I think there is something that I've done historically that may be of value today to somebody else's work, then I will bring that article back to the forefront by tweeting about it, linking to it, and then it drives attention and awareness. In a similar way, I've written a number of book chapters over the years, and for everything that I've contributed, which is available on Amazon to purchase, then I simply set myself up a profile page on Amazon, which links directly to Twitter, and I put all of the linkages to the books that my chapters are in, so you can see that entire profile also. Facebook for me is for friends and family. I have 2 boys. I share photographs of what we're up to, where we're going, what we're doing, but I don't really do too much with my scientific work there. Occasionally I will share my presentations and maybe a publication, but not too much, I'll be honest. But here is an example of posting directly from SlideShare into Facebook with one click. And it shows the presentation, and it will tell you where it was made, and people get more awareness. Those counts on Facebook go back to SlideShare, and then that increases the number of views. It's all connected together. As I said, I'm Chem Connector. I had a blog that was very, very active. Today I don't do much on that at all, I'll be honest. The only thing I really seem to do there at the moment is share my presentations occasionally when I have time to do that. But it is where I maintain my primary CV. There's so many places to do it. LinkedIn has its limitations. Orchid has its limitations. Here I have total control over what is viewed. So I do put my CV right there. And when I print it out, what I make sure is at the top of my CV are the linkages to these individual sites. So if people really want to know about what I'm up to, click on those links and then you'll find everything out about me. So what next? My recommendations would be certainly register for an Orchid ID. I would do the work to get your LinkedIn profile up to date. I recommend anywhere between 4 and 8 hours of work to connect things in there that you think people should be aware of. I would use Google Scholar Citations and curate it, make sure it's appropriate, that all of the articles are from you. I would choose, there's a couple of platforms like Academia or ResearchGate. I use ResearchGate myself. It's my preference, it's not an agency preference. All of these tools are my personal preferences. So please don't take them as a notification that the agency encourages usage. That's not the way it is. These are things for me. I also use Publons, and I really encourage you to participate in building your profile. Share your data, share your presentations, etc. And then what I said in an article, an interview with Nature.com, there was an article there about another site called Kudos where I share information. Didn't mention it today, but it's in the article. I said, choose, if you have the time, choose 2 or 3 platforms, put a couple of hours a month into keeping them current. Make sure you get an Orchid and put your peer review on Publons. I haven't changed my message over the years. I still think that's the right thing to do. I've been doing this for a long time. I've whittled down my personal preferences. And I really think that you need to put effort into sharing the message of what you're doing, your articles, etc., etc. Again, there are various versions of this talk online on SlideShare, and I welcome any chance to communicate with people. This is my email address. I'm sorry that I can't answer any questions directly, but I welcome you to contact me.